Good evening and welcome to another edition of Open Season. I'm your host, Billy Allen. There's your producer, Brian Murphy, on the ones and twos.
What up, what up?
We come to you from a little place called Down the Road Brewery up here in Everett, Massachusetts. They've got the Bruins game up here on what looks like the IMAX machine back there when you see the movies at the Jordan Theater. Bruins in a big one, 4-0, looking pretty strong as they head into the playoffs. We're going to be chucking that around with a lot of other news, especially recapping this weekend's games. Duke lost. Calipari got a lifetime contract. The Red Sox signed Xander Bogaerts to a 6-year, $120 million deal. And the Celtics played a pretty good game against the Heat the other day. They gave Dwayne Wade a piece of the floor, but Celtics came away with the win, so we'll be chucking that around along with all your thoughts. We take your calls at 502-501-3477. Now, getting into it, I think we absolutely have to take a look at everybody's bracket. How are they looking? I think anybody who was looking good before this weekend, it's exactly how we drew it up, right? Michigan State, Virginia, Texas Tech, and Auburn in the Final Four. My God, I think right off the top, we all have to start with Duke, clearly from the gate, from the recruiting class, really bringing in 3 of the 4 top high schoolers into this year's draft. Obviously, with Coach K's tutelage, we all thought that was going to be pretty much that they were going to be the favorite. They ended up playing that way, and obviously quite a game where they're getting knocked off there. And I think everybody says, is that ultimately a failure? Was this year for Duke with the collection of talent that they're going to have? I don't see any reason why Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, or R.J. Barrett would stick around for another year. Probably the best collection of talent you're going to get in some time. And Duke ends up making it to the Elite Eight, but coming up short. And like I said, the way that Michigan State was able to win that game and ultimately come away with a 1-point win in a close affair. I mean, Duke, with the fallout there, Zion Williamson obviously going to be the first overall pick, but for R.J. Barrett, I think he's clearly going to be the number 2 pick. I think some people may try to sell themselves on Ja from Murray State, but I think it's ultimately going to go 1-2. But so for them, they led the way they were both pretty much almost unanimous as far as the college player of the year and the top 5 or whatever team that it is there that they release. So those two just looking incredible. The Duke program obviously looking good this year, but again, losing to Michigan State. And a lot of people kind of blame the coaching. It seemed like there really wasn't a lot of called plays kind of in the Virginia Tech game as well as the Michigan State game. And do people ultimately look back and say, this probably wasn't one of Coach K's best coaching jobs, but again, a lot of talent to burn away a chance there at the national championship. And the way we're looking at it now is Michigan State, Virginia, Texas Tech, Auburn. I mean, I don't think anybody has obviously nobody really picked that from the gate, but I mean, just what a surprise. We kind of talked about how everything had looked chalk for the last few years, and as we look at it this year, of course, with the Final Four, with a 3 seed, a 5 seed, a 2 seed, wasn't quite the path that it's been the last couple of years for some of the top seeds. So as the fallout there goes, and as we look forward to kind of the future, a lot of people talking about Zion Williamson potentially being one of the youngest billionaire athletes. If you haven't paid attention to it, these guys can almost make more than they do in their contracts playing the game now through shoe endorsements. And we are in the midst of what's going to be quite a large bidding war between Nike, Adidas, Puma, all those companies out there. And there are certainly a lot of rumors in terms of what Zion Williamson could potentially get. People are saying that he could potentially get a $500 million shoe deal right out of the gate. So mean, this guy has absolutely played himself into, just a superstar that kind of really transcends college basketball. And I read there was a funny article on ESPN today. Well, it was titled "Zion Williamson is about to get paid." I thought it was one of the most obvious statements, but it's certainly true. Between just shoe deal alone, as well as what you get as the number one pick versus all the other endorsements. He's really a humble kid, though, so a guy that really seems to play with a joy of the game. Everybody always talks about how much they like Zion's joy for the game, his smile. Definitely think he brought something that's a little bit different to college basketball this year with his personality, kind of seeming like he's just always happy, really just a goofy guy. Everybody kind of looked at him from the YouTube videos and the dunks over the past couple of years, but allowing him to play in Coach K's system and making a deep but I'd say disappointing run ultimately in the Final Four loss to Michigan State. A lot of value that he's created for himself. And like I said, I think R.J. Barrett as well. If this wasn't a year where Zion Williamson comes out, I think we're all looking at Zion and kind of talking about R.J. Barrett this way. He's 6'7". He can pretty much score in any way. I think he's really going to fit into the way that guys score today, the way that guys play with their positionless basketball. Cam Reddish, obviously very talented as well, but not one of the top two that we kind of talk about there. Maybe a fifth pick, maybe between 5 and 10, but a lot of talent on a Duke team that came up short. And if you're looking around, you're saying, do you blame Coach K? What type of failure was this ultimately as far as, some of those Fab Five teams that came up short, or this was a team that's had a lot of talent. And I honestly think this was kind of almost like the how the NBA has been the last few years as far as everybody picks the Warriors. I think everybody had pretty much picked Duke. So if you pick somebody other than Duke, you're probably still alive and looking okay, even if your bracket's completely demolished all over the place. So as we talk about that, we're looking forward to a Final Four here of Michigan State, Virginia, Texas Tech, and Auburn. And like I said, going to have to familiarize ourselves a little bit more with some of these teams here. Zion and Ja, kind of the best players that we thought in the tournament. They're both out, and time to study up on some of these other guys that are in there. Cassius Winston and others that have, obviously Auburn with Virginia, just kind of with, a whole lot of different playing styles there. The Tigers are really like a team that's kind of on the run. Whereas the Cavaliers are really a team that's kind of like slow it down, chugga, chugga, chugga. So we'll see how those matchups end up looking. But that's what we're looking at with the NCAA brackets. And God, it was a tough turn and tough twist this weekend if you're ultimately rooting for Duke. I know we all kind of hate them, but everybody always picks them too. So anyway. Now, everybody on the Yankees, here's another thing. Everybody on the Yankees right now, aside from the bat boy, I think, is injured. We see Miguel Andujar. He potentially has a torn labrum. Giancarlo Stanton's out. Greg Bird just had an elbow scare. Aaron Hicks was placed on the injury list. So if you're a Yankee fan right now, that team is in stitches, and a lot of injuries going around to start the season. So it's been unfortunate for them out of the gate, as well as for the Red Sox. Haven't quite started as hot as everybody else had thought, and their two starters kind of got blown up in both of their first starts. Chris Sale gave up 7 earned in his first game and looks to avenge that tonight as he pitches against the Oakland A's. So we'll see how he ends up doing tonight. It's a 10:07 p.m. start here Eastern, so that's going to be a tough one to sit through. And that's what game 6 or so of a young 162 season. Probably not a lot of people here that are going to stay up for that one. But 10:07 start. Chris Sale in game 6 for the Red Sox here, and looking to get the team back to a position where they looked last year as they dropped the first series this year and are looking to find a little bit more contingency here with their starters. We saw Evaldi as well as Sale get absolutely kind of demolished, and we'll see as Sale goes tonight. I think it might be a hot take, but thinking that his ERA is probably going to go below the 21 mark tonight for Chris Sale. So we'll tune in there, see if he can get back to his ace ways. He's truly one of those guys that's one of the best in baseball when he is healthy. He started the last 3 All-Star games. I can't even remember a pitcher aside from him that has started 3 straight All-Star games. I mean, that's pretty special. So Red Sox looking to right the ship a little bit, but one thing that's got a lot of people here in Boston, if you're a Sox fan, what you're encouraged about is they signed a deal with a Scott Boras client before the client ultimately went to free agency. How about that? Scott Boras, a guy that's known for playing a little bit tough with his, with the players that he manages, especially playing tough with the Red Sox in negotiations. Certainly going to do whatever he can to maximize those players' earnings, and always kind of known for taking guys to the mat, taking it to free agency where you're ultimately going to get the most. And I've got to say that I am quite shocked that the Red Sox made it official on Monday. It was April Fool's Day. Didn't quite know what to think, but it ultimately is an extension of Xander Bogaerts to 6 years at 120. And I think if you're a baseball fan in general, somebody who's a fan of Xander Bogaerts or at least aware of his production, that is certainly market value. I know it's a crazy thing to talk about when we talk about player salaries these days, but this is a guy that's had a couple seasons at over 20 homers and over 100 ribbies at the shortstop position, and a guy that's at 285 over his career. I think we're going to see a lot of guys get paid more than him basically over the next couple years. So I think it's a great deal for Boston, and surprised they were able to lock him up. I also think that kind of speaks to something maybe a little bit bigger picture. Just guys enjoy it here because you really can't see that a guy would kind of make this type of deal where it's a little bit less money than you think and maybe ultimately Xander Bogaerts is a guy that you wanted to pay for between 16 and 18 million a year, but you easily do this 6 years, 120 to get it done. This is a guy that's been a Silver Slugger at the position twice, finished 13th last year in the MVP balloting, and he's only 26 years old. So he's a guy that at the shortstop position can give you a lot of power, and I think if he develops into what everybody's, what he could ultimately do, you're talking about a guy that maybe at the shortstop position is hitting 30 homers a year, which is quite a differentiator when you can hit for that type of power at the shortstop position. So by everything, I mean, honestly, shocked that a Boras client did this type of deal with us, and honestly quite happy with the deal. What'd you think, Brian, when you heard the Sox were able to sign Bogaerts for 6 years, 120?
I liked it.
Yeah,
and I'll add to that. I think he's gonna start displaying more power as his career goes on. I also think his defense will get better as his career goes on.
Yeah, certainly, I agree. I think he definitely came in kind of as a guy that could definitely hit, and was looked at as really athletic. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, we'll teach him how to play shortstop. So I definitely agree with that. I think as we see, he's only 26 too. I mean, this is a guy that's going to have plenty of mobility, at the shortstop position. We're not talking about a guy that's going to have to move you assume this guy's going to be shortstop all 6 years of this contract.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yep.
So, plenty of time to learn there and get comfortable as well. So it's not like he really has to worry about job security. Sometimes that can be a thing with guys when they start moving you all around the diamond and see where he can start fielding. So, he's locked in there as well, and I think that helps too, because a little bit younger in his career, I think you were talking about, is this guy maybe a potential second baseman or third baseman. So, helps him be able to kind of sit in there in a groove, and you would expect that he'd be able to get a little bit better defensively. I definitely agree with that. And I think that Sale is obviously, I think that is going to get, I think that was a Chris Sale that I haven't seen really in a long time. The velocity was quite down. I think that was kind of just rust, maybe not ready for this. that's just a Chris Sale. If that really is the velocity that he's going to pitch with tonight, then obviously it's a sign of something bigger. But I think we're going to be able to see him come out and kind of throw for that velocity that we're accustomed to. I'm thinking the first game of the series. I think that was kind of a myth. Kind of an anomaly. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. So all of the starters got rocked pretty good, and so the questions are: did they ease them in, through spring training too much? Like, were they too easy on them? And they all kind of got rocked for different reasons. With Sale, it was the velocity wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
With Erod, the pitching coach Lavangi was saying he was wasn't using his changeup enough. For Eovaldi, it was kind of a few missed locations. So all in all, like, I think the cautious approach was the right one, and I think we'll get a better gauge on Sale tonight. If he's back up there around 95, the velocity is on its way.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing that if you're a Sox fan, you've got Xander Bogaerts and Chris Sale locked into 2026 and 2025, respectively. You'd be able to look down there, and even if a guy like Chris Sale stops producing to the level that we're accustomed to, and I definitely expect him, certainly when you sign that deal, you're expecting to get at least 3 years of the Chris Sale that we know. But even if he ages to be some guy that we've seen it time and time again, guys that are able to mentor some of the younger guys or whatever the case, a lot of this stuff gets lost, and obviously you don't sign a guy to mentor guys down the road, but even if he drops off and ends up being a guy that can kind of scrape by on like a 4 ERA those last couple of years, I still think you're ultimately getting the value on that 5 year. Like, you get 3 years of what you're expecting for Chris Sale. I always kind of expect those deals to kind of crap out about, 2/3 of the way through almost. It seems like those deals kind of lose
especially
any
for
type
pitchers.
of return.
Yeah, especially for pitchers.
And especially, signing an older one as well. You know that this guy is signing a deal at around age 31. So, one thing though, especially for Xander and for Sox fans going forward, for anyone, the reason that Xander said that he was going to sign was just said that he thought that the team had a lot more left with this, that he really wanted to be with the guys on the team. He continually cited his reasoning to stay with the organization because he loves Boston and he thinks that they can win a lot of championships. So if you're a Red Sox brass or a fan, you gotta like the fact that he signed early, and I think maybe we'll see what this happens to. Everybody seems to think that it's basically a foregone conclusion that we're not going to sign Mookie Betts now, I feel, basically because of how expensive he is. And does he end up being a guy that you can sign at $250 million instead of the $500 million or so that everybody's thinking? Who knows? So I think it definitely sends a message for some of the other guys on that team, too, when you've got somebody that's as talented as Bogaerts signing for the long time and signing for something that's pretty much team-friendly. Again, $20 million team-friendly, but definitely could have taken it to the mat and earned more than that, I think, in free agency, especially given his age, his athleticism. So, anyway, David Price continues to say that there's no panic in the Red Sox clubhouse. And, God, wouldn't it kind of be funny if Price got rocked this year almost just because of how confident and cocky he was after they won the World Series last year, saying that he had a trump card. And I don't know. If there's anybody that kind of starts out slow, I almost just am kind of rooting for like the comical reasons of David Price now. I know that's probably not going to be the most popular opinion because we want Price to coalesce here with the team and not kind of go back and forth. But I think it's funny how he basically thought he got the monkey completely off his back and that, he kind of won't be subject to criticism again. I don't know. The way that he's been over his career, I think things can be rocky again, anytime that he doesn't come out and start well. So I think it's always kind of like I don't know, feel like Chris Sale could get rocked 5 straight starts. No one would say a thing, whereas if David Price goes out there and gets rocked in 2 straight, I think we'll already start talking about how he's starting to get older, or can't take the Boston media, or is riding too high off the World Series win last year. So we'll see there with how they go. And for Calipari, I have to talk about this lifetime deal to finish the career there. What even is that? How do you sign a lifetime deal? I mean, if it's, I get it. He's going to coach as long as he possibly can, basically, then be an advisor with the team. But I mean, what is the reason why a team would sign a long-term deal or sign a lifetime deal? How do you negotiate a lifetime deal? And how much money is that thing possibly for? You got to assume that thing's probably at least $200 million. UCLA was pushing at Coach Calipari pretty hard. They had offered, I think, there were rumors that they were going to offer like a $100 million deal. And I think they ultimately offered like a 6-year, $48 million deal. But you got to wonder what it was that Kentucky did as far as luring Calipari to sign a lifetime deal. You kind of look at him as a guy that, as he hits the age 60 or so, maybe he would have been a good candidate to go into the NBA and see what he might be able to do to kind of cross off his bucket list. He had been on a couple staffs in the NBA and obviously wasn't successful for the Nets. But I don't know. I know these guys all kind of get comfortable at the end, and I'd just love to see what that deal actually looks like on paper, kind of like a lifetime deal. It's just it's weird when you don't know actually like what the does he coach another 1 year, 2 year? Do they have him coach in 10 years? So I think that's kind of interesting. This lifetime deal for Coach K. Is that basically the reason they had to put to rest? I feel like every year, no matter what Coach K says or what happens, he's always basically the hottest rumor to join an NBA team. And, is this the way of them kind of finally squashing that or whatever? Who knows? So no Calipari to the NBA and none of that nonsense anymore, as he is going to be locked up for life there in Kentucky. Probably going to continue to, I'm sure that's only going to help him from a recruiting standpoint, because I think a lot of the guys that may not go to Kentucky are probably thinking that he may be out the door. And with him staying there a little bit longer, I think that'll probably only help things. So, probably wins a couple titles, walks off into the sunset. Some advisor on this lifetime deal sounds pretty good to me. And you got running backs and stuff like that, trying to do whatever they can to get a couple-year deal. You got Calipari, and how about this, too? We always talk about how it's right there in front of your face is how these kids aren't earning anything. It's like, Kentucky, the reason why they're so good, it's all their players. And then right there in front of you, it's just Calipari signing this lifetime albatross mega deal. Zion Williamson with everything he's done this year. R.J. Barrett. Some of these other guys with all the attention that they brought to the game. And then you see some of these coaches just getting absolutely rich. Brian, do you think they'll ever do something to compensate some of these players, especially after what we see the coaches getting paid, what type of money we know these programs have, and what type of money the guys bring? I
mean, the calls for NCAA players to get paid, at least in basketball and football, are only going to get louder. It's only, you're going to keep hearing the Adidas scandals, the recruiting scandals, with paying families and whatnot.
Right.
And it's going to erode interest in the college game until they figure that out and do something about it. Even if you're talking, like, treat them as work time students, who get paid a stipend or
right.
something. I mean,
even
you still
if
probably
they had an hourly wage or something.
Right.
Or
Yeah. I mean, they're just bringing too much value to enable coaches like Calipari to get those contracts for the general public to really be okay with this.
I'm pretty sure at some point Jim Calhoun was getting paid about $12 million or something towards the end too,
sure,
and it's
sure.
like, just because the money they bring into the state, and then where else, they as that entity, as the basket, I mean, they really, for some schools, the earnings that they make off the Final Four, the earnings that they make off the basketball team in general, really, go a long way kind of towards the revenue at the school in general too. So, but yeah, I just think it's kind of, it's almost like we see some of these such exciting guys, and then you see the coach is just signing these ridiculous huge deals. And I don't think it's going to obviously be an easy subject to tackle or, an overnight thing. And we've talked about it here and there, but I think players are going to kind of realize, especially with some of these other leagues that are coming out, even if you can make $150K or $300K, that's a lot more than nothing. So do players start to look at that, and does that ultimately be something that we end up talking about years on from now? I think the NBA draft, I really don't think there's any type of question. I feel like every year, you kind of have an idea of who may go first, but I think this year there's really no question of who's going to go first. And I think there's certainly the doubters out there for Zion, guys that think that he should lose weight, think that he's going to continue to get bigger, don't think that he quite has a position in the NBA. For as many people as that, there's people that are saying that he's the most athletic person that they've ever seen in college. That the improvements that he's made in his game over the past couple of years have been nothing short of miraculous. So, I think it's really going to be I think any team who ends up getting the number one pick, and I really don't see why anybody would do something different, but sometimes we talk about teams drafting for need. I think it's just going to be a slam dunk for you that it's going to be Zion Williamson. I think at consensus number one picks, I think Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, Blake Griffin. That's kind of, just consensus, like not even those are guys that were pretty much like absolute no-brainers. And like I said, R.J. Barrett is so incredible, and he hardly even gets talked about, playing right there next to Zion. In a lot of cases, doing a lot of so it's just Zion has just become this kind of larger-than-life thing, and I think what it does is gets rid of some of the questions at the draft time. That number one pick, I would say that's going to be 100% taking Zion right there, and then I think you're either going to be taking John Morant or R.J. Barrett at number 2. And then I think you start to get into a little bit more of, where do guys start to slot out. But I feel like over the last couple of years we've seen a little bit more parity, or, that guy went first when we didn't necessarily think he would. Or, I didn't know that I didn't necessarily know that the Suns were going to take that center from Arizona at 1 this year. So, I don't know, kind of surprised me a little bit. So, like I said, it's basically going to be kind of Zion there at number 1. The NBA, how about this? As we talk about, go back and forth between basketball, NCAA, NBA, the NBA three-point record has been broken for the 7th consecutive year. You've heard that right. 7 straight years the NBA three-point record has gone up. So, as we talk about kind of corrections that they need to make in the college game with compensating some of these athletes, when do we get to a point where it's too much three shooting? And, it's already pretty much too much three shooting for me, but it's just incredible. You look at guys like Blake Griffin, who legit didn't shoot threes for the first 8 years of their career. Now the guy's making 2.5 threes a game, and it's just you look at the Rockets, they routinely will hit 23s in a game and stuff. So, I don't know. It for me, it's not as exciting for me as I feel as it is for some other people. I don't know necessarily what your take on it is, Brian, or what you think we can do, if there's anything they can do to kind of get guys back to the basket in any way, or is this just going to turn into everybody stands behind the line and hucks?
Oh yeah, I mean, given that they're practicing the threes from just over half court, they're practicing it with, catching it from an inbounds pass with the back to the basket. I think do you think we'll see the 4-point line come into play at some point, which would open up the game so much that I think then you would actually start to get more interior scoring, because if there's a possibility to get 4 points and you're chucking that up, those rebounds are going to be crazy.
Yeah. And the reason why I wouldn't say no or that it's crazy to the 4-point line is because the 3-point line was so it would be the same thing basically for, nobody ever thought that there was going to be like a further spot from the basket that you'd be able to get awarded point. It was always get close as you can. Dr. James Naismith, we all know, started out with the peach bucket. You get as close as you can possibly. And that was kind of the way that they had played for so long. I don't even necessarily, so they've done a few things over the years that I can really think of that have changed the game. The shot clock, the 24-second shot clock, guys used to be able to hold the ball really and obviously pace of play dictates that, eventually you have to pass, but without having to be cognizant of every 24 seconds, changing possessions. That, as well as the 3-point line, have definitely been kind of huge tweaks to the game, and the 4-point line would definitely be a huge tweak as well.
And how about this?
But does that, my last point before you go, does that almost open up more of this 3-pointing stuff? Do we get guys that just
definitely
start become 4-point specialists? I don't know. I just feel like the game, I feel like it's literally an NBA Live game now where you try to hit threes on every position basically, because 3 is one more than 2, and over time, if you can hit 33s a game, that would.
How about this for a hypothetical?
How about it?
Institute a 4-point line and reduce the shot clock to 21 seconds.
Yeah.
That's going to, the game is going to get a lot sloppier, but maybe that's.
I just so miss guys that played in the post. There's such a skill to, guys like Hakeem Olajuwon. Sometimes
Kevin McHale.
you watch his
Patrick Ewing.
Some of these guys, their spin moves and just everything, and I feel like some people think
David Robinson.
Yes, absolutely. You're continuing to name some of the great guys, but yes, good post play. We saw guys like Jaleel Okafor, and I'm not saying that he's good by any means, but his first year in the NBA, he was almost a 17-9 guy, and now he's almost a guy that can hardly even get on a court. And you've basically seen in kind of his short career, he's only 23, 24. Not a whole lot of use for a guy like that who's slower, who takes up a little bit more space, who he's going to put in shots around the bucket, but he's not going to really block a whole lot. And, it just feels like I miss some of the skill of the point guard to the big man and the inside the post game. And I get it. It's exciting when guys are splashing shots 35 feet away from the bucket. I just don't know when it's going to start, when it starts ending. Curry's 3-point shots are up every single. These guys, they're just shooting more and more every year. It's becoming more and more part of their shot selection. And with this trend, with this stat too, the 7th straight year, the 3-point, they haven't even accidentally gone down. I'm sure it's been a pretty linear. I don't know what the statistics are, but to go up 7 consecutive years, I don't know what that says kind of for the future of the game and for the future of big man. I saw Nikola Jokic shooting a couple threes. The guy looks like he can barely even move, and this is a guy that you now have to fear from the 3-point line. So, I don't know. Are we going to see another Shaq? Are we going to see? Because I still think that would just be so. Because it would change the whole way that you'd have to defend if there was another guy like that. You couldn't defend like how the Warriors do. You couldn't play. Playing against a guy like Shaq would really break them, I feel like, and especially if you had 2 guys. We almost saw that kind of last year in the Pelicans playoff series when you have 2 big guys down there. And now, unfortunately, Cousins was hurt, but we saw what they were able to do to them during the regular season and playing them tough. And I honestly thought that would have been interesting to see. So it's kind of like, I think the way to combat this, and I say combat this just because I feel like it's skewing so far to this, is to, ultimately pair up a couple big guys inside. If you had Embiid with like another internal force, I mean, you couldn't have every guy outside on the 3-point line, and that would change defense a little bit more. So I don't know. I think we always see sports kind of go in circles, and I think we're trending just way towards way too many threes right now. And I'm kind of thinking, what can they do to almost like stop this reliance on threes?
Yeah.
Is there anything? I don't know. I would do a 4-point line. I'll do a 5-point line if I could just see like a little bit more. I mean, it's amazing. They used to just talk about how, like the 3-point shot was the least percentage, the least highest percentage. They always talk about high percentage looks, and I don't know. That just seems to, and holding the ball for the majority of the shot clock, you'll see guys just catch the ball from 35 feet, 1 second, launch it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just a different game for me. It's less appealing for me.
So when they talk about adding a 4-point line,
Yes.
would it be removing the 3-point line, but you move it back so that a 4-point shot? So you can get either a 4-point or a 2-point shot, but the 4-point line is way further back. Because the 3-point shot seems like it's well within the range of a lot of players.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think years ago, when you didn't practice that as many threes, it definitely wasn't. But now that it's kind of bred into you from, I mean, you just pull up any. I'm looking at right now just 3-point attempts. Right, I'm looking at the Lakers and Oklahoma City Thunder game right now. It's 9 minutes to go in the third. The game is basically a half of the way through. The Lakers have shot 23 threes, and the Thunder have shot 31 threes. Now, this is halfway through the ball game. They've shot 55 threes. So it's just, I don't know. It's almost as many field goal attempts as they have together. So, I don't know. I think it's too much. I think we got to do something to stop it. 4-point line. I'm willing to listen. Speaking of people that are going to need to listen, apparently, as we trend to the NFL on a quick note, Russell Wilson has actually given the Seahawks apparently a deadline for which they need to strike a deal with him.
Uh-oh.
Now, I've heard rumors of him somehow ending up in New York. Have you heard
I can see that.
anything like that? And
I haven't
do you
heard
think it's
it, but
possible that
I can see it, yeah.
Do you think it's possible that the Seahawks don't pay Russell Wilson whatever it takes to get a deal done?
They will do whatever they can to keep him there, but is that because he's got to be thinking, he's got to be seeing what's going on with the Giants, really, but you could almost throw the Jets in there too because they don't have anything proven at quarterback. I mean, Darnold is, definitely worth giving him another season, especially, one with already a year under his belt in the NFL. But, I mean, Russell Wilson loves the limelight.
Yeah.
And he's got to be thinking, maybe I can leverage my way into New York.
And be a winner there.
I wouldn't. I mean, that Giants team's got a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Who's he going to throw it to? First and foremost. But I don't think that's as much of a concern to him. He's got his one championship, and sure, any player wants as many as they can get. But I think the New York media market is as much of a draw as anything for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so I'm kind of interested here because this it's the last year of a 4-year, $87.5 million deal. He's given them. He's a nice guy. He's gonna let the Seahawks. have enough time to do their taxes. So he's given them an April 15th deadline. So submit your taxes. Tell Russell Wilson if you're going to move forward with him. And then the significance actually for them is that that's going to be the first day of the Seahawks like off-season workout kind of program or whatever.
The voluntary, voluntary OTAs.
But Russell Wilson scheduled to make $17 million in this year. I mean, I guess does he kind of look at Garoppolo and say, "Can I play another year at $17 million?" When there's guys that have basically never played and are getting $25 million, or like, does that what he starts to think, or because basically what the Seahawks typically do off-season business, they pretty much put extensions to the side. They're not really a team that kind of deals that their history basically has been to wait it out to the end of an agreement before giving extensions. They're not like the Red Sox. They don't extend you while you're still on a deal and have a year left. So, I don't know. Does the fact that they kind of typically deal that way, do they start to deal a little bit differently because it's Russell Wilson? I mean, his last deal basically had made him the second highest paid quarterback at the time, but I think now he's actually fallen to 12th in terms of quarterback's salary. But I never give a crap because Tom Brady was like 15th, 20th for so many years there. So ultimately, if you want to win, I feel like you have to know that you can't take such a high cap hit at that position, or you can't build anything around you. I think some of the smart guys have realized and signed for more bargain-type deals. Drew Brees is a little bit more manageable than I think like he could be. He could go to free agency. Some team would still pay him 3 years. If you're going to pay 3 years to guarantee Kirk Cousins to play, I mean, I think you'll pay Drew Brees 3 years of guaranteed money to get him on your team. So, I don't know. We'll see there because Rodgers is currently now at a $33.5 million salary. Oh. So that $17 million salary that Russell Wilson's getting, I mean, I guess he's starting to say, look, do I play this last year of a deal where I'm kind of half of where the top quarterbacks are making? I don't know. So, and you hear different things there because you hear the Seahawks kind of say that Pete Carroll released something saying that they're on it. You hear things about Sierra, and obviously she's Russell Wilson's spouse, and her affinity for New York, and some of these whispers. So, I don't know. It's something to kind of at least keep your eye on. It seems like things are not as kind of foregone conclusion as you might think with Russell Wilson staying there long term. At least we'll find out in the next 13 days. That April 15th deadline.
Get your taxes done.
He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's out there on the market.
Easily a top 5 quarterback, no doubt. I mean, he kept that team alive last season.
The thing I look at, too, is how many times have we seen him kind of – when he first started, they had a really good offensive line. The last couple, they haven't. It's kind of been like a run. He's been able to be really efficient for how much duress he's been under over the past couple of years. That's really what's impressed me. You've kind of looked at the Seahawks and been like, they don't have any offensive line going into the year, the last couple. And a lot of times I feel like he starts, just running back straight after the snap. He's got to run for his life, and he gets out there and he makes enough time and sets himself. I mean, he's a special player.
He is, and he's not throwing to the most talented receiver core. They're hard-nosed, they'll fight for the ball, but any 1,000-yard receivers in the past year,
when
probably
Doug Baldwin's the best guy you've ever played with. I mean, nobody's going to say that you've played with an All-Pro.
Right. So, that will be an interesting situation to watch play out, especially too, I think, because Russell Wilson has positioned himself as the nice guy. Even as much as he clearly loves the spotlight, he's the nice guy,
Yeah, he definitely has that reputation. So It's kind of crazy the thought that you can't keep. But I mean, ultimately, if the guy doesn't accept your deal, I just feel like any team would pretty much pay this guy whatever he wanted. So we'll see if the Seahawks do that, and we'll see kind of where he goes from there. But I can't see a reason why the Seahawks wouldn't change their business policy and help, not lose a franchise quarterback over that. So I expect them to get a lot closer than they are and deal with this a little bit differently than.
Likewise, I expect the Seahawks to do what they can.
Well, what was it?
And it's going to be it's Russell's got the leverage. It's going to be interesting to see his response to their offer.
The Seahawks had those two offensive line. What was it? Russell Okung and there was another guy like Wilkinson. I feel like they'd sit out the offseason the entire year, basically. Then the Seahawks would pay him when it was time to basically, that last week or whatever that you have. Then they'd pay the guys the contracts. Let them hold out or whatever. So it has kind of been the way that they've done business. But I mean,
well, and how about Earl Wilson?
Right,
their safety, right?
Yeah,
and
that's gonna change negotiations for a lot of players. I think that I think that ultimately played a lot into the Le'Veon Bell thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he looked
certainly
apart,
certainly
and I think he said, $14.5 million. That's great, but nothing's guaranteed. And by putting my name on this paper by the Jets, I get $35 million guaranteed. Yep. So in his mind, it was worth it. But yeah, you look at guys like Earl Thomas.
Thomas, thank you.
Earl Thomas, guys that do what you want, right? They play, they play through the pain, and then you have it right there, and the team's never going to say, "Oh, whoops, you got hurt. Let us pay you that $10 million." Ryan Shazier, who, his goal is obviously to come back, and I wish him the absolute best in that, but it looks like he's not going to be able to do that. And another guy that happened to right in front of Le'Veon Bell, and for a lot of people, Shazier was someone who was certainly going to earn a lot of money, and he will receive some aid throughout his career, but he won't get anything near what he could have potentially. And there's no going. You can't back negotiate. So you see why these guys do it, but yeah, Russell Wilson playing tough. He gave them a deadline the last time that he did one of these deals, but it wasn't until training camp and all that they ended up getting things. So setting the deadline a little bit earlier this year, maybe looking to cause a little bit more friction this time around with the negotiation, or maybe looking to get his way out of Seattle. And maybe that Jets rumor or that Giants rumor that I heard wasn't as far-fetched as I ultimately thought in the beginning. So let's see. Going around the Celtics beat, Celtics spoiled Dwayne Wade's last appearance to Boston. They gave him a piece of the parquet floor before the game, as everybody is doing their best they can to give Dwayne Wade a great farewell tour. I got to be honest, I'm pretty sick of these farewell tours, whether it was for Poppy, Mariano Rivera. I mean, I get it. We're saying bye to some of the greatest, but I don't know. I don't want to sound cynical, but just every night it's a production for these guys. Trading jerseys, signing jerseys. It's like, even if he gets murdered by 30, it's like, I don't know. I couldn't just sign it. But anyway, so Dwayne Wade's last game here, and showed a ton of appreciation to the fans, got quite an ovation. But we saw Al Horford actually put up his first triple-double in a Boston Celtics uniform. So it looks like Big Al is kind of playing right at the right time. He's for me, he's really been impressive over his past few games, really, and kind of leading into this playoff run. And I think he's something that the Celtics are definitely going to have to rely on. And I think Aaron Baines definitely plays big into that equation too, as we're kind of down to the last few games here going into the regular season. Aaron Baines is a guy that's going to block a shot, grab you those tough rebounds. He's nothing that really sets off a stat sheet, but when you look at the way that the Celtics play with him in the ball game, it truly does make a difference, and it really does seem like they're able to play a bit differently. It's also been interesting to see kind of how they've played with Kyrie and without. We see Kyrie in some of these games when he does play, and he's kind of taking games here and there off. When he does play, trying to play that hero ball at the end of the game, which the Celtics definitely need, but it seems like they really just haven't found that balance of having kind of the hard-fought team that they've had over the past few years with ultimately the talent and combining that at the right time. Like last year in some of those games, that game against Cleveland where you had Rozier going 0 for 10 from 3, you had Jaylen Brown going 3 for 12. You're like, God, if these guys could have just made a layup. And that's where you really could use a guy like Kyrie Irving. But it just seems like they haven't been able to kind of integrate him into those situations where he's going to be most helpful for them. It seems to be like kind of when Kyrie plays, the game's a little bit different. And it's a little bit more of that Kyrie kind of hero ball at the end. When Kyrie doesn't play, we see the offense run through. Quite frankly, we see it go through Gordon Hayward quite a bit, and it's a whole lot different when Hayward plays without Kyrie Irving. If you've paid attention to any of those types of stats, the breakdown is something like 16, 5, and 5 for Hayward when Irving isn't on the floor. So I think a lot of people, while nobody says that this is a better team without Kyrie Irving, especially not me, I'm not getting dragged down that path, but does Kyrie Irving just kind of not play in sync with what this team is going to look for going forward? And with a free agency crop that is pretty rich, I mean, I guess I'll ask you a question that's been going around a little bit. And, I know you're not necessarily probably the biggest NBA guy, but how much difference do you think there is between Kyrie Irving and, say, Kemba Walker?
Interesting question. I think Kyrie Irving is an overall better, more skilled player. But for the Celtics, Kemba Walker might be the better fit.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like I think I'm starting to see, and I feel like fans are almost starting to see, I almost think it's trended to where no one really thinks Kyrie is going to stay long term, or at least kind of the overall opinion. Is that the feeling you have, or you think
definitely.
he's staying?
Yeah, no, he's.
But in that, I was kind of like, oh my God, we're looking at Marcus Smart as our point guard, or Rozier as our point guard, and I think kind of looking around at some of these contracts. Well, the Celtics may not be the biggest winners in free agency like we want to be, with being able to sign Anthony Davis, which really transcends and transforms and does all those things for your franchise. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the move that the Celtics are going to be able to make, but it would be interesting if they could piece together guys like, maybe they're not the winners, but they piece together guys like a Jimmy Butler, they piece together a Kemba Walker, integrated into this team, and maybe that's something that fits a little bit better for kind of the mold going forward. I think it's interesting because for the Celtics, you say we're not getting rid of Brad, and I think on most teams, you say we're not getting rid of the player. I think it's kind of Danny Ainge, Brad. I think there is more of like a mold kind of, with Wick as well. I think there's kind of something that they're looking to build kind of going forward, and I think it's Brad's way or kind of the highway ultimately if it becomes
I think
something
where Brad Stevens and Ainge's way, or I think Ainge has regular input on kind of the coaching approach.
Sure, but I guess it seems like Kyrie was like a guy that they would have done anything to kind of keep, but it almost seems like now, I don't know, I can almost talk myself into kind of letting him go and seeing what's out there on the free agency market just because of the fit. I don't know if the fit in what they're looking to do moving forward. I mean, they just go for some of these more hard-nosed guys, I guess. I mean, I don't know how to say it because Jason Tatum fits into the offense, but I guess he's just not as you're not looking to lean on Jason Tatum in the way that you're looking to lean on Kyrie Irving. And I just think it's been weird how they haven't been able to, kind of take the way that they don't back down and combine that with Kyrie's finishing ability, basically, to be that kind of team we thought was going to win closer to 70% of their games. So as we head into the playoffs here, are they going to be able to – is Kyrie going to say, screw it, let's win a title and kind of change his play? Is he going to become more aloof? I guess I don't fully know what to expect from this team, and I know no one really does. I know no one really has a lot of good feelings about them being able to beat Milwaukee, but I don't know. I think I can kind of sell myself on potentially moving away from Kyrie. I was one of those guys that kind of kept hitting the mat, even though I don't like Kyrie personally. I just think he's the type of star that you kind of have to keep to be able to drive guys to Boston. I thought he was kind of a big chip that guys can look at and be like, oh, Kyrie's there. I can go there. For guys that aren't as familiar with the Boston market and stuff, we had to really go to the max to sign Al Horford to start bringing other guys here. So you kind of get in that position when you don't have a lot of talent. You've got to overpay for certain guys, and I don't know. Can you start to sell yourself on this team moving away with Kyrie Irving with the fact that the point guard position is so deep, and we've seen so many rookies be able to kind of hit the ground running? We've seen guys that looked pretty raw in college. De'Aaron Fox with the Kings right now has really changed things around with them. Elfrid Payton with the Suns is putting up triple-doubles left and right out of nowhere. I mean, we've just seen a lot of guards be able to come in and be good. So you look at it and, ultimately, is it maybe better for the Celtics long-term that if they don't sign Kyrie Irving? That's almost kind of like what I'm trying to sell myself on at this point, because I don't think he's going to sign here long-term. And I do think that they kind of prioritize their system, basically, over the top player, which is different than the way that most NBA teams kind of approach business. Like, you'll fire coaches 5 days into a gig if the player says so. I mean, Mike Brown, I think, has been fired 4 games into a season twice, I think, by the Lakers as well as Cleveland. So, I think Kobe fired him, and then LeBron fired him when he got him. So, coaches definitely change different ways, but it seems like Brad Stevens is a guy that's, going to be here for a long time, and, it's kind of important that guys, fit into that mold, and it just seems to be, for me, it seems to be that Kyrie doesn't quite fit the mold that this team is looking to build. I don't know. I know you need as much talent as you possibly can. I'm not saying for them to get rid of talent. It just doesn't seem to be the best mix.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's kind of getting to the point where, the thing that would fry the brains of Celtics brass would be if, at this point, they do make a deep postseason run, and because then it's like, well, what do we have here? Why?
That is actually a great point. Actually, if they were to go strong, does Kyrie say, "How can I leave this?"
Yeah, and has that extra gear and leads them to even if it's something like a Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah,
I think fans, after the season they've had, fans would take that as a pretty successful season, but.
Does Kyrie take that as a? And I guess, do you think there's a circumstance?
The other side of the coin, right?
Is there a circumstance, I guess, where Kyrie says, "I can't leave"?
No. I think Kyrie is always going to look out for Kyrie. So I think there are always circumstances where Kyrie can be like, "I'm out of here."
Well, as we wrap things up here, I just have to say, because Connor called us out last week, the Bruins taking down the Blue Jackets 6-2 in a dominating effort. You saw 2 goals from Jake DeBrusk. You saw a goal from Brad Marchand as well. You also saw one from David Pasternak. So a lot of the usual suspects getting some of the work done, as Bruins 5-5 over the last 10, but looking strong as they head into their playoff push here with 3 games remaining now, or is it 2 games remaining now that this one's finished?
Two left. Two left. They got the Minnesota Wild on Thursday and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they're close out the season. So
basically locked into the 2 slot.
They are locked into another first-round matchup with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
All right.
So,
well, hey, that's going to do it for us here this week on Open Season. We gave it to you for an hour straight, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Actually, sorry, we will not be back next Tuesday. We'll be off next week, so you can tune up with us. The week after that, we come to you live on Tuesdays from Down the Road Brewery here in Everett, Massachusetts. And we're on from 9 to 10. The number's 502-501-3744.
3477.
3477. Good God. Have a great night. And we'll catch you next week. I'm Billy. That's Brian. And we're out.